Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern, and I am with who I lovingly call my little bro. And he's not actually my brother, but I've known him for, I think, all of your life, but not really. And I'm with the esteemed Robert Kortiz, the famous drummer from Dark Star Orchestra. And my friends out there will giggle because they know that I'm a fan of the people who like the Grateful Dead, but I'm not a fan of the Grateful Dead. But I'm going to get so much credit right now having you on. I'm just like felling because, you're super fucking cool. And here's what I want to say to you. If I became friends with your sister in 7th grade, so we were like 12, how old were you?
When Debbie was 12, I would have been 8.
Yeah. Okay. So to me, you're 8. And the fact that you're like a dad with kids and whatever, but to me, you're still the boy who you had the coolest house, first of all, but that finished basement. And then there was yet another room where they stuck you.
Right.
Lined with egg crates. And, before I knew that you were crazy, you could have been crazy, but they stuck this little 8-year-old boy in a room with egg crates because he banged his drums
all day
of the
long.
time.
Yep.
And since I've known you, it's been 2 things. It's been drums and it's been hockey.
Still is.
Okay. And what I know from what I do through the yoga and all the learning is you were always meant to do what you're doing now.
100%.
So you lived your authentic life coming out of the gate. And I just love that you have made your life completely what you're meant to be doing in your life.
How lucky is that?
How lucky is that? And you've also turned what we both love and connect with, the best camp in the universe, Camp Sabra. Shout out to Camp Sabra. You have also, I love your shirt. He's got a shirt on. I love that your life also encompasses working for camp. So we're going to get to that as well. But I want to thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And I'm just so stoked about this. So I actually had to go look at a little bio about you. I didn't even know that you went to Arizona. I just remember you going to Webster.
I started at Arizona doing classical, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I took some time off. I traveled through Europe. I went and saw the Dead in Europe. And then I came back to Webster and studied jazz, which was way more my alley.
Yeah. There was a bio that a kid wrote about you in the Jewish Light a few years back. And he said that he was trying out for the jazz band at high school.
Yeah, it was Jordan Pollard.
And that you smoked him away. I didn't even remember were you also in marching band?
I did everything. Yeah.
You did marching band?
First hour every morning.
So, I missed you on the Pom Pom Squad.
Yeah, but see, like when you were a duet, you and Debbie were freshmen when I was in 8th grade. So by the time I was a freshman when you were freshmen in college, so we never were.
Yeah, no. And I still know how many marches it takes between goal lines, between yards, by the way. It's an
first
8 count.
hour.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh my God. And I'm still friends with Ken Black, our major.
I remember Ken
our
Black,
drum major.
Sure. I remember him.
Yeah, he was amazing. All right. So you did marching band, you did jazz. Was Poshak still there?
Yep. For when I was in junior high was Mr. Poshak, and then my freshman and sophomore year. And then he left and he went to Kirkwood, and he just a few years ago actually retired. And I went to his celebration and saw him for the first time in 35 years and told him what I was doing. It was a really cool moment, actually.
That's amazing. I love those full circle moments. So my cousin Betsy, who you know, Ron, she's married to my cousin Ron. She was big in the band and Mr. Poshak. And I think she was teaching at Ladue for a while as well.
He had a huge influence on me for sure.
Yeah, right. Teachers are like that.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So to segue then into the influence in your life, please tell everyone out there, because I don't even know, how did you get into literally the Grateful Dead band that you're in? But how did you get into the Grateful Dead? And when you were in school, was this always your plan to play for this band? So how did this all happen?
God, no. When I was in high school, I listened to and played every kind of music you could think of. But all I knew about the Grateful Dead was tie dyes, and that wasn't my thing. We went to a preppy school and all that. And
Yeah.
I'm not into that stuff.
We did tie dyeing at camp though.
Yeah, but even but not yeah. But and so to make a very long story short, one night
Don't make it long.
my senior year in high school, every Memorial Day weekend, my friend Neil Jaffe's parents would go out of town and we would camp out at their house for the weekend. And our senior year, we were partying a little harder. It's got 3 weeks to graduation and whatnot. And we were out doing whatever we were doing. And then really late that night, I was laying on the couch underneath the blanket, just pretty much done with the night, but still really wide awake. And one of the guys who was being the DJ for the night with the jam box and the cassette tapes put in this music. And I'm just sitting there and listening to it in the dark. And it was a band and they finished a song called Not Fade Away. And they end with this chant and the crowd clapping it with them. And then the band left the stage and the crowd kept going. And then the band came back and rejoined them. And I just looked, I go, what? Who was that? And my friend goes, that's the Grateful Dead. I'm like, no, that's what the Grateful Dead is. And he's like, yeah, his name was Kirk Boger. And he's like, yeah, that's the Grateful Dead. They're playing in Chicago next week. You should go. So I went. And sure enough, that night, they ended the show with Not Fade Away. And we were all in the crowd doing this. And they came back on just like the tape. So I thought they did that at every show, which they don't. And as soon as the fact that I was getting to do and experience live what I had just heard a week earlier for the first time, the exact same thing with this symbiotic relationship between the crowd and the band, I was hooked. That was it.
Wow.
That was it. And then I was off to school to study classical, but I was listening to the Dead a ton. Went on Dead tour with Andy Brown and Stephanie Zetscher in Europe in 1990. And then when I came back, I was ended up at Webster playing it on wedding bands and all the jazz stuff at Webster, but also started playing in a local Grateful Dead cover band for fun. And it was really cool. And
Was
I did
that Jake's Leg?
No, that was called the Schwag. But, and then I was going to see Jake's Leg at that time. They were really who I was learning the Grateful Dead from because you could go see them 2-3 nights a week.
Right.
And I was playing dinner theater on a riverboat down on the riverfront.
Oh my God. I had a ballet recital on that boat.
Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as soon as we were done, I would go hear Jake's Leg for the rest of the night.
Wow.
And then I was in this band in the 90s in St. Louis and I quit. Eventually I was done with it and moved on, was doing other musical stuff, playing 7 nights a week and doing this team building through drumming program during the day for my day job.
Is that the discussion percussion?
Yeah, the percussion discussion. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
And thought my Grateful Dead days were over and I missed it. And then Dark Star kind of fell in my lap. It's a 2-drummer band, obviously. And the other drummer that I had been in the Schwag with found out they were looking for a drummer. So he went to Blueberry Hill to hear them. And this is very early on in their days. Like they're less than a year old. And they're looking for a drummer. And so he wanted to get the job and he went to Blueberry Hill in St. Louis to hear them and introduce himself. And the circumstances dictated, they said to him, yeah, I would love to hear you. But now we found out we need 2 new drummers because the other guy's leaving as well. Do you know any? And he said, well, I know a guy, but I don't think he'll be interested. I'll call him. And, we're close to 30 years old at that point. So it's like, how many more years can you struggle being a musician before, I'm single, I'm 30, I'm broke, I'm working in restaurants. And how much longer can you do this before you quote unquote give up the dream?
Yep.
So I had a lot of important questions. So I talked to the gentleman who was in charge at the time. He's no longer with us. He passed away some time ago.
Mm.
But how do you travel? What's your business plan? How do we get paid? All that stuff I needed to know. The music I knew was going to be fine. And he answered all my questions right. This wasn't just a bunch of fuck ups smoking weed and playing dead tunes.
Right.
No, we're going national. This is our plan. This is our mission, blah, blah, blah. So the other drummer, his name is Dino English. He's still my drumming partner in the band 25 years later. He and I drove up to Chicago with all our drums packed into the back of his pickup truck. We went to Martyrs on Lincoln.
Yeah.
Like Lincoln and Irving Park. That was their home base. We walked into Martyrs. We met them for the first time. We played a show with them. And when the show was over, they said, when can you guys start?
Oh, wow. Were you like shitting your pants at the time? Like you just knew that you had it.
I thought, I talked to some of my musician friends here in town about it. And some of my, some people whose opinion I valued. What do you think about this? Here's how we're doing it, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, my honest reaction was, yeah, this could be good. And this could be a really cool experience for a couple of years, and it just took off.
Yeah.
My 10th day in the band, I went from playing like 10 days earlier. I was playing at like Riddles on Delmar here in the window where everyone can see you from behind on the sidewalk. And 10 days later, I'm playing at the Fillmore in San Francisco.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
how did I get here?
Yeah.
So I think this will be good for a couple of years. And now it's been 25.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's still, I've always said every time you wonder how long should you do something, right? Well, I'm going to do it till the wave crests. And when the wave starts after the peak and the wave starts to come down, that'll be the time that I need to start thinking about what's my next goal, my next part of my journey. And every year something else happens that keeps the wave going up, whether it's another Europe tour or playing Red Rocks or going to Japan or just playing less shows and being home more, yet doing better financially than I've ever done. There's no reason to stop.
That's amazing. And what I love, what I know enough about the Dead is the fan base, right? I think on one of your podcasts. So for those of you who are not familiar with what else Robert did, because I don't think you're still doing it right now, you told
I
me
had to
because of the
stop.
touring.
Yeah.
He had a podcast called Music Plays the Band. And I want to get to that in a minute. But I think one of your segments is there's like a Dead band in every city at any moment in any night. Like you can go find the music.
There's a Grateful Dead cover band in every town for sure. 100%.
Yeah. And so the longevity and the fan base alone, I highly doubt the crest will fall, but you'll know when the time is. I just find it, I think in terms of like of all the bands that you could have joined, this will feed you the most for the longest.
For sure. And something that's helped is, let's be honest, the Grateful Dead's crowd. Now, the Grateful Dead played their last show almost 30 years ago. So if you actually saw a Dead show, you're getting up there in years, And at the beginning, that segment of the audience was the most important to me because they had seen the Dead and they liked us, but they're getting older and they don't go to concerts as much. So you had to start to figure out how to get the younger crowd. And a lot of them brought their kids, and the Dead have been in the mainstream enough for people to know it. But having said that, it's really changed since Dead and Company started because John Mayer brought in this whole new audience of people that had never seen the Grateful Dead and found out, holy shit, this music's really good.
Yeah.
So now our crowds are much younger. Our crowds are much younger. I mean, they're still the older heads are there, but we see people in our crowds now from 15 to 70.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask you about that because I have it in my notes. So in my recollection, and I can't remember if I just heard it in the air or maybe Debbie told me, your sister, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when you started with Dark Star, that Dark Star was the only band actually approved or sanctioned by the original people from the Grateful Dead?
I wouldn't say officially sanctioned because that's not a thing, but accepted enough that they would come out and play with us whenever we were in San Francisco and became friends with us and respected what we did and would talk positively about us in the press and things like that. And they still do, which is great.
Right. And then what about Dead and Company then? Are you guys competitors? Are you collaborators?
No.
Do you have nothing to do with each other?
Yeah, the only thing we have to do with each other is we play the same music. Having said that, Bob and Mickey, the two original Grateful Dead members that are still there, are friends of ours and play with us when we're in San Francisco. All the other guys in the band are very good friends of ours, and we play with them in side projects and whatnot. One of the guys is a really good golf buddy of mine, and we play golf together whenever we can. So there's definitely a mutual respect. And, that was the thing with the Grateful Dead, why the members of the Dead who are still alive, why they saw us in a positive light and were backed us, if you will, and play with us because they saw that what we were doing was not putting on costumes and going out there like a tribute band. They saw that we were earnest and heartfelt and serious, very serious about what we were doing. And let's be honest, it's only good for them if we're helping keep their music alive.
Right. Right.
So, and for the most part, they've been nothing but gracious to us over the years.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And
Yeah.
so one of the things I loved about your podcast is, so first of all, you and I connect on so many levels. And I'm just so glad you're here.
Me
But
too.
we're both babies of the family. And I don't know if it's because we're babies of our families or it's because we were raised right in the city of St. Louis, which of course Nellie calls the dirty. But I feel like you and I are really good connectors of dots. And, back in my day when music was in my life, it still is, obviously, but, all we had were albums.
Right. I still have most of the albums you guys listen to in Debbie's room right over there.
As do I. And I would pour over the liner notes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And in your podcast, you were learning things about these musicians that were in this band, that band, this band, that band. You had somebody that invented an instrument.
Right.
And so for me, it was like, you know me long enough to know Dan Fogelberg, I love, Phil Collins, I love, James Taylor, I love. And the Eagles, right? So you got Timothy B. Schmidt, who we know is the bassist, but he also lends his vocals to Dan Fogelberg, to James Taylor, everything. And then, Leland Sklar, the long haired bass player guy, he played with those people too. You've got Waddy Wachell on tour now with Stevie Nicks, my other Stevie, if you're out there, I love you. And we're both Geminis and I want to sing with you.
He actually looked great on Saturday Night Live the other night. He looked
and
great.
He played with Linda Ronstadt, Timothy B. Schmidt sang for her. All of these things. And then there's Russ Kunkel.
Another legend.
Russ Kunkel played with Fogelberg. He played with, I think he played on Steely Dan. He played with
Brown,
all these people, Jackson Brown. And so for me, it was so cool, even before I recognized how cool I thought it was, that there was these people helping each other out. And so to hear you describe on your show in the way you describe the music that you're honoring, it's the great connector. And I loved what I think you were on with the Lazaroff brothers is it Green Sky Bluegrass?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Emily's
Anders,
first,
right.
Yeah. So Emily's first summer at Sabra, she came home with that music. I loved it. But I loved how you said that guest, what's his name?
Anders Beck.
Yes. That he, from a bluegrass standpoint, said without the Grateful Dead, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Right.
So how their genre might be pigeonholed in some lanes, their reach is so far.
Oh, yeah. When
they're
people
geniuses.
And when people would ask me about that, I said, well, look at the variety of guests on my podcast. It'd be everybody from Donna Jean Gotcha, who was a member of the Grateful Dead, to someone you totally wouldn't expect, like Bob Crawford, who plays bass in the Avett Brothers. Now, the Avett Brothers couldn't be any further from the Grateful Dead. And there's points in that guy's life where that's all he listened to, but now he's out there with an amazing Americana band. I love the Avets. So their influence runs the gamut across all genres of music, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love, you're obviously a huge fan of music, and it's nice to it must be nice for you to play in a band, be a fan of that band, but then be exposed and have connections to all these other people that you idolize, get to know.
Best part of my job, Laurie, 100% the best part of my job has been, I'll use an example of the band Los Lobos, who I have loved since high school, and saw them at the Westport Playhouse and the theater in the Round, and have become such good friends.
What's that song? They've the harmony on it. What's the song that I love?
I don't know. There's so many, but those guys were someone who I idolized, and then we started running in the same circles. And now, whenever we're in the same place, I am welcome to join them on stage and be a percussionist anytime I'm around. How cool is that for me? Robert.
And do you?
Yeah. Every time we're around each other, I play with them. As far as, Louis Perez, the quietest guy in the band, said, as far as we're concerned, you're a wolf. So I'm totally welcome. Richie Hayward from Little Feat, when he sat in with us, this was a drummer who I looked up to forever. Yeah. And now I'm playing with him. That has by far and away been the best part of this job, is the people that I have met and gotten to either sit in with them or have sit in with us. And the people that I like were influences on me as a musician, and now their numbers are in my phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
huge. Huge.
Huge. And then the other thing I'll say is, we were talking before we started about, living your best authentic life and all that. The way I describe it to people, I get paid to do what I studied in school and what I love, and I make people happy while I'm doing it. To me, that's like the definition of living the dream.
That's 100% accurate. And you make yourself happy as well.
That's my happiest times ever. Anytime is when I'm sitting behind a drum set.
So as a parent, because you and I are both parents, and of course I love and adore your parents, and I call them Mom and Pops K. Was there any point in your trajectory, because you said, right around you were 30, it was like shit or get off the pot time. Did they ever pressure you to do that? Or were they always 100% faithful in your ability to land on your feet, figure it out? Like, were there any hard conversations along the way? I know they love you and I know they support you, but as a parent, you want your kid to pay bills.
The conversations were never direct, but I know it was there. Underlying, my parents let me be a drummer. They bought me my first drum for my 7th or 8th birthday and 6 months of drum lessons, and we'll see how it goes. And they supported me all through it. They paid for my college education.
And they stuck you in that room with the egg crates.
Exactly. And they let me stay in there all day and all night as long as my homework was finished. And then when I went to college, they paid for it. And when I was doing gigs, But yes, I know when I was getting to that point, like you're talking about around 30, that they were questioning in their minds. Dad had the business. He would have loved for me to have taken over, I'm sure. Just wanting a better life for me than living in an apartment in the city, working in restaurants. And then I joined this band, and I'm sure they're saying, oh God, here's another. Here we go. Now he's 30 and he's trying another one. But about a year and a half after I joined the band, we played in San Francisco at the Warfield Theater, which is a huge, one of the biggest places we'd played up to that point. Huge place in the history of the Grateful Dead. They put some of their most epic shows there. Was a big deal to be playing there. And mom and dad flew out for the show because they wanted to see. It was very new still. And that night was the first time that Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead sat in with us. And mom and dad were there to see that. And then like 2 weeks later, there was a big spread in Rolling Stone magazine about it. I think that was the moment where they said, you know what? He's actually making it. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They saw this big show with the legend that we were emulating play with us, and then followed up in the biggest music publication in the world. And at that point, I think they're like, okay, he's really is doing it and he's making a career out of it. And it's not just playing in bars anymore. It's really a career.
Yeah. That's great. Thinking about your house, I would come over and go, right into Debbie's room or go in the basement, whatever. And we'd have our French onion dip with the Doritos and, the pretzels. And there's always great parties at your house. And,
it's their
the story, the big story, I got caught smoking pot by your parents at your house. I had to go
you weren't the only one.
Do the march of shame down the hallway. It seemed like it was like from Poltergeist, the hallway getting longer and longer. I had to go in there, crying my eyes out. I'm like, I'm really sorry you had to see me doing that. We talk about it still. But, I would go in Debbie's room, we'd listen to our music. What kind of music did your parents listen to growing up? I don't remember.
We had you guys would go into Debbie's room and she had that brass and glass thing with the stereo on it and all the albums under it. And that was a lot of what I listened to. And they're all over here still, the Styx and the Billy Joel and the Eagles and all that stuff you guys.
Well, and Beth too. Like Beth listened to a lot of music.
Yeah. And we had the Stones and James Taylor and Bonnie Raitt and all this different stuff. And then out in the living room, we had the stereo. And in that cabinet was my parents' albums.
Which were what?
Which I also still have a bunch of over here. It was all kinds of different stuff. I mean, some of it was like Broadway show tune soundtrack. Mm-hmm. The album that I remember the most out of there that I still have that was a huge influence on me and still is, was Harry Belafonte's Greatest Hits.
God, my mom too.
Yeah. That was in there. Yeah. So many things on that album, and I still listen to that album all the time. So I remember them having that in there. They had a bunch of Israeli stuff in there, which all informed me and helped me become the musician I am. Because I heard between Debbie's room, Beth's room, and then I joined that stupid Columbia Record and Tape Club, get 16 8 tracks for a penny thing.
Didn't we all? Yeah.
And so between all the different stuff I got there, which was everything from country to Broadway to Michael Jackson to Quiet Riot to Rush, I got exposed between you guys and my parents and that to every kind of music there was.
Yeah.
And it all informed me and became who I am. I still love playing all that stuff, but most of the music that influenced me in the house came from Debbie's room and Beth's room, not so much from mom and dad's cabinet.
So I can take some credit for your success then, because I was there.
Well, by all means. By all means.
Just like an older non-sister would.
And I have all of Debbie's vinyl that you guys listen to. I mean, it's all in the closet right there. I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Debbie don't want to keep.
We can trade albums, you and I, someday.
Sure. Anytime.
Yeah. So speaking of show tunes, I wrote down a question because I don't know this answer, but the other day I was listening, like I do from time to some show tunes, and Hair.
Yes.
And I never really listened to the lyric in the way that I heard it, knowing I was meeting with you. It's like, like the Grateful Dead, darling. So where did this name, Grateful Dead, come from? Do you think it was from Hair?
No, they pulled it out of a dictionary.
Really?
Yeah.
So I wonder what was first, the chicken or the egg, like the band's name,
no, the band
and then the musical Hair.
The musical Hair. No, right. The musical, The Hair came out. By the way, that was in Beth's room, that soundtrack on vinyl.
Oh, it's a great album. I have it.
Well, the band came out first because the band started in 65 and Hair came out not too long after that. They changed their name from the Warlocks to the Grateful Dead in 65. And then Hair came out, I think, in 68 or 69.
Gotcha. Yeah. If you go back and listen to that album now, it is incredible how the lyrics then apply to today.
100%.
And the craziest thing is, because I blogged about this on my website too, is the fifth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
We're all supposed to be going to the fifth dimension now, and we're in the age of Aquarius. So it's like
Right now?
they were aliens sent here to to make that song. 100%. They have to be. How did they know then that we'd be moving into the age of Aquarius now? And this move from 3D to 5D is what we're like the whole new Earth. I'm
Right.
sure you've got a lot of fans, Robert, who are into the new Earth and the
I'm sh-
5D and Ascension. I'm sure you do. And yeah, where we're at right now is the age of Aquarius.
Wow.
So it kind of blew my mind when I was like, oh my God, the fifth dimension wrote that. Moving in the fifth dimension. And the age of Aquarius is now.
That's crazy. And that
So
they
you can
wrote
go
that,
look at it.
let's see, almost 50 years
It's
ago.
in the 60s. Yeah.
50, 60 years ago. Right. Bad math. 60 years ago. Holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, all right. So enough about bad math. I want to talk about, we talked about your high school journey. We talked about your college journey. I did mention, and I fucked up the name, but your percussion discussion.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because I know you also drum at camp.
Yeah.
Is that part of that?
Yeah. When I go down to Sabra every summer, I go down once each session and I do my program called the percussion discussion. That's the only time I do it anymore. But back in the 90s, before I joined Dark Star, that kind of became my day job while I played at night. I started a company where you go out. I started doing it for another gentleman doing corporate groups and then kind of changed it and did that for him and traveling all over the country. And then kind of changed it and retailored it more for church groups and temple groups and kids because that's more my style in the corporate world. And it's basically taking percussion instruments, in this case, Brazilian one, samba music, and putting instruments in kids or adults, putting instruments in people's hands. And within like 2 hours or 3 hours, making them become a cohesive percussion ensemble. And it was teaching, obviously, musicianship, but collaboration, leadership, step outside your box, communication skills, all these different things. And you could cater it to whatever group you were working with to really harp on those different fundamentals, depending on the group you're working with. But at the end of the day, it was taking 10 people on this instrument, 8 people on that instrument, and sending them separately to make those 10 similar instruments sound like one. So you got your first group right there, that unit, and then bring the 6 units of the 6 different instruments together and make them sound like one. So that's your second larger unit and make it sound like a samba a samba ensemble that would be marching during Mardi Gras, marching during Carnival. And I still do it. When I first started with Dark Star, I still did it with Washington University and some high schools here in Sabra. Now I just do it with Sabra a couple times a summer. For people who are campy, it's basically like teaching all the things you learn on ropes course, on low rope, but doing it with instruments instead of out in the woods.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that image. I also love, because of what I do, the way I just did a chakra workshop. I was hired by a financial planning group.
Yeah.
So just like you cater to the niche, I organized why we care about our chakras in terms of our money body and how to break through limiting beliefs about money and finances. And it was really great. So I'm so grateful I got to do that.
And you
So then-
probably had people in that group. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
It's because this was my experience. You probably had people in that group who were so into it. And then other people in that group who are just staring at the wall going, this is the dumbest fucking thing ever. And then the third group, the people who came in and had no idea what to expect and thought this was going to be stupid and come up to you afterwards and go, oh my God, that was amazing. I had no idea this existed.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it is in life, right? And what I was going to say, and it's no surprise that you interrupted me because I think you read my mind, is you connect the oneness consciousness in how you do what you do. Because just what you described, like you've got these separate individuals. Now they're playing a separate instrument. They become one. And then as a group, they become one.
It's so cool.
And that's life,
Yeah.
right? And this intention necklace is what I wear, which is Scott and Marla Berger. They went to Arizona. It's wrapped with the tree of life, and there's intentions that you put in here. And I had them on my show. And this basically is a tool of oneness. So everyone who wears one not only knows they're valued, which is the most important thing, but it connects us to everyone else just with our intention and how we put it in there. And so it's a beautiful thing. And you see it like, the magic of music, the group collective, right? The swaying and the lights and the lighters and the singing and everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. That's what yoga is. So that is your yoga.
Yeah.
You are.
It's a great analogy.
It's a collective. It's a kula. It's a community, right? Some people would say it's a cult.
Sure.
You Grateful Dead people.
When it works and it fires on all cylinders and then it ends, how cool is that feeling?
Yeah, it's like you're just in the flow. And I'm sure you're like me in this way. I don't remember half the time what I do or how I say what I say. And people comment, that was so profound. What was that quote? I'm like, what are you talking about? I just
Yeah.
spoke. And
Right.
they're like, no, what's that quote? I'm like, I don't know. I just made it up. You know?
Yeah. Well, because you're speaking from the heart.
Exactly. Like you play from the heart. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your play from the heart too.
Okay.
Your hockey. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I grew up a baseball fan, big Cardinal baseball fan. And
Yep.
back in the day, Cardinal football was my thing. You were the first and only family I ever knew who did anything with hockey. I did not raise, first of all, I wanted to talk about this.
I didn't know that.
You,
Wow.
so here's something. So I'm not sure you can connect this, but I'm sure Debbie and Beth might be able to. Growing up in St. Louis, if my parents had to drive me beyond 15 minutes anywhere,
Oh, yeah.
that was far out. That was too far. Like, when I had dated my boyfriend in high school, we didn't go to the same high school. That was too far out. That was way out Olive. Like
Chesterfield Mall was in the country.
Chesterfield Mall was in another planet.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, I never went downtown. The first time I went downtown was with your sister in her red, was it a Camaro or a Thunderbird?
There was a
With the
Firebird.
fucking Firebird with a
Yes.
T-top.
Pontiac
She's the first,
Firebird.
she's the first person that ever took me to the landing.
Wow.
And do you remember back in the day, the VP fare, I think it was free, first of all.
It was.
We would spend all day and all night down there. Beach Boys, REO Speedwagon, Journey, Foreigner, like you name it. Everyone under the arch smelled like shit. We never showered. And then we all slept at your house, thank God. And then went back and did it the next day.
Yep. I remember that.
And you, in your musician world, I think it was Beth and Debbie took me to see you at Jake's Leg. I'd never been to Soulard my whole life.
Wow.
Right. And you just mentioned 45 places you played drums in bands, like Blueberry Hill, I know, of course, because that's
Right.
New City. It's close enough. But I couldn't tell you half those other places,
Right.
And so, yeah. And so I forgot what I was just talking
Hockey.
about.
Hockey. So taking
Hockey.
you to hockey.
So I never went to hockey. That was too far away. But the stadium Busch Stadium apparently wasn't because we liked the baseball.
Even though it was further away than the hockey stadium.
Exactly. That's right. So you grew up playing hockey and your
Yeah.
boys play hockey. So what
Yeah.
would you like to say about that?
I mean, I still play hockey too, not right now as I'm
Yeah.
recovering from a hip replacement, but I'll be able
'Cause
to
you
play.
might still be 8 in my mind, but your body's not 8.
Right. Exactly. So, I'm 4 weeks out from my hip replacement surgery. And according to my doctor, I'll be able to play again in January. But it's just a passion for my family. It always has been, my mom still watches every night, watches the Blues game and comes and calls me the next day. Did you watch the game last night? How come he wasn't working hard enough? That kind of, it's hockey is our family. So now I have a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old. Actually, the 8-year-old's home from school today and he's downstairs. They didn't have school. He's downstairs right now watching last night's Blues game and stick handling in the living room. And then he has a game tomorrow. My older son is 13. He has a tournament this weekend with 5 games. I'm an assistant coach because I travel, so I can't be head coach, or I would. So I'll be on the bench all weekend with both of my boys. It's the great bonding agent, if you will, in my family. And mom and dad, Debbie still comes to the boys' games if she's home. It's Saturday morning at 9:00. Debbie's there watching my boys play hockey, just like we watched her son Jacob play hockey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just we're a hockey family through and through. It's just always been our passion.
Yeah. I still don't understand that game. I know this enough about myself, though. I have a better time in person watching a game than on TV because I
For sure.
can't quite follow the puck on TV because I'm just not trained to.
You
But
can
it was the
appreciate
same
the
with
speed
soccer.
in person as well.
First of all, I can appreciate the artistry and the athleticism
It's crazy.
of the athletes on the ice. And Slapshot, your house was the place I saw that movie, which is a
Excellent.
classic movie. Best movie ever about hockey, in my opinion.
Without a doubt.
On the VHS, right?
Yep.
That was a great movie.
Well, in addition to all the amazing parts of that movie, one of the guys that wrote it was from St. Louis. So,
Ooh,
I don't know his name, but in Paul Newman's apartment, there's a St. Louis Blues poster on the wall. And the girl who breaks up with the star in the team, she's wearing a Cardinal hat the whole time.
I'll have to go back and look for that.
Like
I love
one,
that.
yeah. So there's a lot of St. Louis connections in Slapshot too.
Ah, wow. All right, Robert, in this moment, what is bringing you joy?
In this very moment
Very
today,
moment. Yeah.
well, speaking with you, first of all, because we've been trying to do this forever and we're finally getting to do it. But in the bigger picture, what is bringing me joy right now, that I am recovering from a major surgery and getting to spend, even though I'm recovering, I've been home for 4 weeks with 2 more weeks to go. And that's a huge break for us. So getting to spend all this amazing time with my family is what's making me happy right now.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So before we end here, I want to talk one more thing. I want to talk about Camp Sabra.
Yeah.
I know Emily went to Michigan. I know people who go to Michigan, they bleed maize and blue or whatever bullshit. Okay. Sorry, Michigan, it's not bullshit. But in
I
your
like Virginia.
family, I do too. But in your family, you bleed St. Louis Blues, but we all bleed Camp Sabra.
Yes.
So I know your family was just honored in a huge way. They always are. They've dedicated their life. All of you kids went. I went. My kids went. So you're in charge of what now for Sabra?
For the past 5 years, I'm no longer am, but for the past 5 years until January, I was the chairman of the board of directors. So very involved on that end with the nuts and bolts of the daily runnings of camp and whatnot. Still am, because I still sit on the board of directors, and I am the chairman now. Again, I was before I was the chairman of the board. I'm the chairman of the alumni. So, I'm
So
still
when's our reunion?
August 23rd, 24th. No, wait, August 22nd or August 23rd, the weekend before Labor Day, this next coming year, 2025.
Oh, awesome. All right.
Yeah,
Well, you heard it here first, folks.
you're going to get a save the date in the mail very soon.
Okay. That's wonderful.
Um,
Yay.
we just had an event last Saturday night. We just had a fundraising night for the alumni canteen, which is alumni donating money to give back to camp every year. And we had a great trivia night last Saturday night. And we raised over $15,000 that we're going to be able to use to buy backpacks and canoes and tents and all the stuff that camp needs. And that doesn't come out of the camp budget. That comes directly from the alumni.
Yeah.
And then we'll go down in August and we'll have it's camp's 55th birthday and we'll have our reunion down there. That's probably the last time I saw you.
I think it was. Yeah. Well, no, you were here. You came for a show and Nancy and I and your sister went, but
I've seen you since then.
Probably. Yeah. I've seen you since then.
But you guys got to come to this next one. It'll be next August. And you'll hear
100%.
about it. And last time we had 150 people there.
Yeah.
This time we're going to fill the dining hall with alumni who come down and be kids for the weekend and get to relive all of that,
Yeah.
And my kids go there now.
I know they do. You'll have to have square dancing again. That was really fun.
Our water bottles filled with tequila.
Yeah. Well,
that was a blast.
It's for the alumni, Robert. We're allowed to do some things now that we couldn't do or they didn't know we did at camp.
That's why the reunion's only open to 21 and over.
For me, it was sneaking out to go meet the kitchen staff. That was not my finest moment, but it was cool. I wanted to ask you about the Lazaroff brothers. And so I know we're just going to play a little geography now. Are they related to Jay?
Yeah, they're Jay's cousins.
Okay. And then there's Joe, who is from
not
Sabra.
Related. Joe is ROV. These guys are ROV. You know what Joe does?
I know what Joe does. Yeah. Joe's a producer.
It's crazy, man. I knew that. He did like the Gilmore Girls and all this. So he was my Hobbit counselor. But when I'm sitting here for the first 2 weeks after surgery and I needed something to binge, I just came across this show and I watched one episode.
Or something?
No, it was called Designated Survivor.
Oh, he did that one too.
And he was the executive producer of every episode. I was like, oh shit, that's Joe Ezra. That's my camp counselor.
I know, right? Yeah. He was just at our reunion. Yeah.
But the brothers Lazaroff, Jeff and David, they have another brother named Josh. And the three of them are Neil's kids. And then Jay and some others are Gary's kids. Neil and Gary are brothers. And so they're all cousins.
But the Lazaroff brothers play music in St. Louis?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They do. And they are very good. And they had they host their own festival. They were my partners in the podcast, as you know.
Yeah.
I'm doing a thing with them in December. They do their annual Hanukkah Hullabaloo concert. In the spring, we did a really cool musical Seder at the City Winery. They did a Passover Seder with all these different guest musicians. And then they do regular rock concerts, too. They do everything. They're amazingly talented.
What's their band?
It's called the Brothers Lazaroff.
Oh, okay.
And they have some of the best musicians in town.
and I see their stuff on Facebook. I have to pay more attention. I'm going to put all this in the show notes also for sure. Like you're going to help me link up whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
I wanted
Whatever.
to also circle back because when we were talking about your journey and your parents' support, I was connecting in my head, Nancy. Okay, so her son, Jeremy Schmetterer.
Yeah.
The reason I asked you is I remember talking to Nancy about when Jeremy was at Mizzou, he was in the Motel Brothers, right?
Right.
And I didn't realize the story of the name of their band, he and Jack, at the time, they were both A.E. Pies. And I never knew that the A.E. Pie house at Mizzou was an old motel.
Yeah.
So that's how they got the name. And then it was, he went to journalism school. And when he graduated, he sat down with his parents. He's like, look, I want to do music. I want to keep this going. And they're like, okay, we're going to support you for like whatever it was, a year, let's say. And by God, that kid's made it. He does the intro and outro for my show.
Oh, does he really?
Yes. And
That's
so
awesome.
that's shout out to Jeremy Schmetterer. And I just didn't even, he's always putting new stuff out on Instagram. And Nancy didn't know this, but on Sunday she was taking my yoga class. And I had forgotten I had 2 of Jeremy's songs on my playlist. And she's practicing yoga and she's like, wait, is this Jeremy? In the middle of the class. I'm like, yeah, it's Jeremy.
I knew nothing about what he was doing. I knew he was trying to be music. Then last summer, Nancy was coming to St. Louis and we were going to try and hook up and all that. And it didn't happen. And I go to lunch just randomly. I go to this restaurant I never go to called The Shack. And I'm literally
I love it there.
And I'm eating by myself. And I look over in the booth and it's Nancy and a couple other people I knew and her son. And so we ended up talking that night. He was in town to play that night. And that's why she had come in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are you with? And he told me, I'm like, holy shit. You're like a side man for big artists.
Big artists.
You're the real deal, man. Good for you. So major kudos to him.
I know. He's producing, he's creating, he's killing it. I love that restaurant, The Shack. It was the Coco's.
Yeah, it was so random. I went there by myself. I'd never go there.
Yeah.
And obviously I was supposed to run into Nancy that day.
You were supposed to. Yeah. She's great. I just saw her last night. So I wanted to wrap this up in a bow. And I'm so glad that I get to do this because the episode to which I was listening with you and the Lazarov brothers, they had said that you were interviewing, or it was either you said or they said that no matter where the musicians in Dark Stars or wherever musicians start, somehow they all end up in the Grateful Dead, whether they were influenced by the Grateful Dead or they are playing cover band music. But what I loved about hearing that, and I'm probably screwing up the statement now, but it just really hit me that wherever you go, you end up in the Grateful Dead in some way.
Yeah, you do.
And I would like to think in our life, we know wherever we go, we are going to end up, hopefully, gratefully for the life we had before we die. So it's like, we're all Grateful Dead, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if we're lucky. Right?
I love it. That's awesome.
So I wanted to wrap it up in a cute little Larry bow for us.
Very Larry.
Is there anything else you want to tell my listening audience or your fans out there? What is up next for you? Like what's up with your tour? Where you're going? When can I sing with you? The problem with the Grateful Dead is I don't play an instrument.
It doesn't matter.
I sing.
Yeah, but Lisa sings and doesn't play an instrument. And then there's, all this Jerry Garcia band stuff that had 2 female vocalists on it, because he toured with a band that had 2 female vocalists. So hopefully we're going to be up in your neighborhood in March. I'm still waiting to hear. We're supposed to be actually coming up to your neighborhood in 2 weeks originally when we were scheduling our fall. And before it got announced, we got a deal. We got an offer that we couldn't refuse.
Ooh.
So we had to reschedule some things. So hopefully we'll be up there in March. But we just got back like the day 4 weeks ago, right before my surgery. We had just gotten back from a 2-week tour in Europe, which was phenomenal. And we go over there every other year. And we're going to go out in November. We're pretty much done for the year. We're going to go out in November for about 2 weeks up on the East Coast, New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and whatnot. Do a quick New Year's run, which is DC and New York, I think. And then in January, we do our week in Jamaica that we do every year. And we'll get back to work hard, like a hard tour in February. So this is kind of most relaxing time of year, if you will.
It's your summer vacation.
Yeah, longer breaks because in the summer, we're on all summer long.
Yeah.
So this is our summer break. I think we have maybe 15 shows the rest of the year. And then in February, we'll start hitting it hard again for the next 6-8 months. And then before you know it, it'll be next September. We'll be on break again.
Yeah. We'll go. Well, we'll do this again then when you're on another break.
I will do this anytime you want. I really enjoyed this.
Well, thank you. And likewise. And yeah, if you ever come across Stevie Nicks or Sheryl Crow or Lenny Kravitz, everybody out there knows those are my people and they're looking for a little background vocalist. You let me know.
All right. Back when Cheryl was in St. Louis, that might have, well, were you guys at Mizzou at the same time, weren't you?
I don't know. What I do
You
know
guys were there with Brad
is
Pitt. I know that.
we were there with Brad Pitt and he dated a St. Louis girl at the time he was there. And I think she was there, but I didn't know that she was there.
She would have been playing the fraternity parties and shit back then,
I don't know if there was nobody playing live music back then. It was
No.
all like the big boom box
Yeah.
or like somebody spinning records or something.
Her first band, she started by playing frat parties in Columbia.
Well, if it wasn't at ZBT or AE Pi, it didn't happen. I mean, I was a little sister at ATO for 5 minutes, but yeah. So
Well, if I see any of them, I will keep an eye out and put in a word for
thank
you.
you. All right. I love you. Thank you for being with
I love
me.
you. This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're still 8.
With a gray beard and a fake hair.
Exactly. All right. Robert Kortiz, the esteemed drummer and my little bro, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.